ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is a molecule that carries energy within cells. It is a type of nucleic acid and is action-packed with 3 phosphates. There are processes that produce ATP, including photophosphorylation, cellular respiration, fermentation, and beta-oxidation. The cellular respiration is a catabolic, exergonic, oxygen-requiring process that uses energy extracted from macromolecules or the glucose to produce energy or the ATP and water. The stages of cellular respiration include glycolysis, citric acid or Krebs cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation or the ETC. In plants or in seeds that has not germinated yet, glucose is stored in the form of starch and breaks it to germinate. First step is the glycolysis. We will assume that we are using only one glucose molecule. Glycolysis takes place inside the cytoplasm. In glycolysis, glucose is converted into 2-pyruvate. Glycolysis uses ATP to produce its net yield, 2-ATP and 2-NADH. After glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation will occur. The 2-pyruvate is transported into the mitochondria or specifically in the mitochondrial matrix. In the mitochondrial matrix, pyruvate is oxidized and converted to acetyl-CoA producing 2-NADH. The second step is the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. This happens in the mitochondrial matrix. The 2-pyruvate produced earlier is oxidized producing 2-acetyl-CoA. An acetyl-CoA will undergo one turn or cycle producing 1 ATP, 3 NADH, and 1 FADH2. The other acetyl-CoA will undergo the second turn or cycle, making the Krebs cycle net yield as 2 ATP, 6 NADH, and 2 FADH2. This is the conversion of the ATP produced per process. 1 NADH is converted to 2.5 ATP, and 1 FADH2 is converted to 1.5 ATP.
So what is the net yield in cellular respiration? Let's solve the conversion. Glycolysis produces 2 ATP and 2 NADH. 2 NADH is equivalent to 5 ATP. Pyruvate oxidation produces 2 NADH equivalent to 5 ATP. In Krebs cycle, 2 ATP, 6 NADH, and 2 FADH2 are produced. 6 NADH is equivalent to 15 ATP, and 2 FADH2 is equivalent to 3 ATP, in total of 32 ATP net yield. Fatty acid beta-oxidation is the process by which fatty acids are broken down to produce energy that enable us to perform activities. Before proceeding to the beta-oxidation, an equivalent of 2 molecules of ATP is used for the activation of fatty acids into its active form, which is the fatty acyl-CoA. Beta-oxidation is a spiral process with 4 sequential steps. These steps are repeated until all the carbons are converted to acetyl-CoA, and in every cycle, 2 carbon groups are used. However, in the last step, 4 carbon groups are utilized. The first step is called dehydrogenation, in which fatty acyl-CoA produces 1 FADH2, followed by hydration with water as a product. The third step is also dehydrogenation, but it produces 1 NADH. Lastly, the fourth step, which is called thiolysis. 1 acetyl-CoA is produced, and in this first cycle, 2 carbon groups are used. What we have left now is a 4-carbon fatty acyl-CoA. This now will be the last repetition. The same cycle is followed. However, only 1 FADH2 and 1 NADH are produced, even if it is a 4-carbon. Meanwhile, in thiolysis, the 4 carbon groups are cleaved to produce 2 acetyl-CoA. To sum it up, caproic acid, a 6-carbon group, produces 2 FADH2, 2 NADH, and 3 acetyl-CoA. In every FADH2 produced, it is equivalent to 1.5 ATP. 1 NADH is equivalent to 2.5 ATP, and in every acetyl-CoA, there are 10 ATPs, in total of 38 ATPs. How about the net yield? Remember the activation process? An equivalent of 2 molecules of ATP are used. That is why we need to subtract 2 ATP from 38 ATPs, resulting to 36 net ATP yield. To make it easier for you to know the net ATP yield, here's a trick. We'll make use of N as a number of carbon. First, the number of carbon group is divided into 2 and subtracted by 1 to get the FADH2 and NADH. Second, the number of carbon group is divided into 2 to get the number of acetyl-CoA produced. Let's try to solve the net ATP yield of lauric acid. Lauric acid is a 12 carbon. Let's divide 12 by 2 and subtract 1, and we'll get 5. It means there are 5 FADH2 and 5 NADH. Next, divide 12 by 2 to get the number of acetyl-CoA. Let's multiply the 5 FADH into 1.5. We'll get 7.5 ATP. Then multiply again 5 NADH into 2.5 and there are 12.5 ATPs. Multiply the 6 acetyl-CoA into 10 and we'll get 60 ATPs. Sum it up and we will get 80 ATPs. Because of the 2 molecules of ATP used in activation process, we need to subtract 2 ATP, resulting to 78 net ATP yield. Let's compare glucose and fatty acid, which both has 6 carbon group. Glucose produces 32 ATP and caproic fatty acid produces 36 ATPs. The per gram of glucose has 4 calories, while the per gram of fatty acid has 9 calories. This shows and proves that fatty acid gives the highest energy in the body and also contribute to the weight gain of the body. Imagine a grain of rice which approximately constitute 100 molecule of glucose can produce 3,200 ATP. Compared to a piece of fried chicken, let's assume that it has 100 molecules. A piece of chicken can produce 7,800 ATP. The longer the fatty chain are, the more ATP it produces. Well, that's it.